right, hello everyone. How are you guys doing today? Give me a shout out, or not a shout out, that too, that's nice, but just let me know if you can hear me or if I'm coming in too loudly. We've got, Professor Geek with his stream last night, he was running into mic troubles, and it's because StreamYard puts it at a default setting, audio setting called echo cancellation, and I've just been wondering if the sound is better without it. It was better for him, so hopefully it's better for me. Let's see what you guys are saying here, and then I'll take that banner off. I hear you. Audio sounds good, but a little low. I am away from my mic. Let me bring it closer. How is that? All right, loud and clear. This is Final Fantasy. So I'll be closer to the microphone in this way. And yes, that was Primitive Supposition. That was playing, and I'll take that banner off. You can find that on my website. Speaking of which, let me go ahead and pull my website up because there are a couple things I wanted to update you on, and then I'll go ahead and put the video up. I think I've got everything. 1 second. I think the camera looks okay. Okay, so better. Okay, so it was because my microphone was like way over there. So yes, hello, welcome. We'll get started on the topic. That actually means a lot to me. It's going to be something worth talking about. But before we get into all of that, I wanted to talk about, well, we're going to welcome you in the chat, then talk about a little bit of musical updates. We've got, and then also my channel member and moderator saying looking clear and beautiful. Well, that's good. That's good. It's still short sleeve season, even though this is a really thick short sleeve shirt. So hopefully I won't get too roasty. It does sound better. Final Fantasy fan says it does sound better with echo cancellation off because it works in the exact opposite of what it says. Yeah, I know. Yeah, okay, so what happened with Professor Geek's stream was the audio sounded like, he was, in a glass bowl or underwater. What I think StreamYard tries to do is it tries to suppress a little bit of room noise, like extra air, but you really do need that air for just that little bit of echo, as if you were speaking, because without any echo, then you do feel like you're in a glass, fish bowl, and it just doesn't sound good. So that yeah, and I do that the same thing with Zoom settings for my online teaching classes. It's like, why have that as an option? The only thing that can work is if you were live streaming and you have kids running around, or maybe a dog barking or something, and maybe it's supposed to act like a noise gate of some kind, but it just doesn't work. Not for the microphone. So let's welcome everyone and talk about the closure of art schools, art colleges, and also just the slow death of the art world in general. And I think it is a slow death of the art world. We'll talk about what the art world is in conjunction with the art school closures. It should be a pretty interesting, if not enlightening topic, at least to me. And, it's based on my experience as a music student in college. As you guys are aware, I have 2 bachelors, both music degrees, music education and composition, and a master's in music composition. So I was seeing this attitude of sorts firsthand. But let's go ahead and welcome the chat. Dr. Y is the first, at least from what I can see. You say, welcome to, good to have you. Good to see you. I wish I could catch this one. I'll have to rewatch it later. Good. Yeah, we'll be talking about art schools and the environment, shall we say. Brian Gilmartin says, welcome, Brian. Art schools closing? What could that be about? Well, actually, it's not a new thing. It's actually been kind of a trickling away, or trickling down. Well, I can never use the phrases right when I'm streaming, but it's been happening over the last few years, actually really especially since the pandemic. But we'll get into that as far as articles and such. We've got Ghost Planet, good to see you. Wonderful husband and professor, drop that truth, my love, I hope so. Big Al, always good to have you. Sorry, I got there's a fruit fly, and I forgot to the plan was to make a cup of tea and put it over there, but I'll just try to ignore it. But Big Al, good to see you. Good to have you with us. Stunning and brave Megatron, of course, you are up too for being a channel member. Thank you. The world's best uncle at your service. Well, I'm glad you had a good day as an uncle. That sounds good. Ace Mowick is in. Good to see you. Good afternoon to you. Samuel Proctor also in. Final Fantasy, of course. All the usual people. Private Eye, thank you for joining us. That might be everyone. Oh, Andreas Hernandez, who's a channel member right now, saying what did you miss? Nothing. just some music. We just started. All right. And let's go ahead and get to the stream. Now, let me just talk about my musical updates and journeys. Let's first add, let me add my website real quick. Let me share the screen, Sound Engraver. All right, so that should be sharing. So yeah, this is pretty basic website with my music. I have one single track here and mailing list if you want to join as a part of my email list. You get a free track if you do. And we've got my music here, my 3 albums, a couple EPs, and some singles there along with the cover. And then finally, we have, it's a new, I dropped my bio because there wasn't really much to say and I didn't have a picture, so no bio page anymore. And I have a store, not merchandise just yet, I would say. It's just actually, here's the update. So I was going through selling piano transcriptions of video game music through this distributor called Arrange Me, and they were pretty much a company under the umbrella. I don't know how it works exactly, but it was a distributor that was in partnership, or is still in a partnership with Hal Leonard and some major music publishers. And, you know, so I started uploading my transcriptions, my sheet music to that platform where I could get like a 50% profit, you know, if I sold like a page of music for $1.99 or $2.99 depending. Well, recently Arrange Me, this platform I was using, up their minimum price to $4.99, and video game music is $5.99, and I just thought that wasn't cool. In fact, my sales, I actually was making sales off of this old doll piano transcription, so you can still get it here on my website for $2.99. I was selling it for $2.99 when I uploaded the video. It was steadily making sales, and then when the hike in price, you know, from $2.99 to $5.99, miles didn't show up and Arrange Me. So I'm like, Arrange Me, come on. Like, why would you think you're going to make more money when the sales decrease? So anyway, I decided to unpublish all my transcriptions because even very simple music, like beginning music, you know, something that shouldn't be more than $1 was $4.99. And I thought, no, if I'm going to sell sheet music, you know, however I can, public domain or whatever, or for educational purposes, it's going to be under $2, you know, especially with my beginning music tracks or my beginning violin music and piano music. This is intermediate piano. It's like year 3 piano for both of them. So I thought, you know, 3 pages, you know, $1 per page is pretty reasonable. So you can go to my website under store right now. This is temporary, but it's selling something. You can go to my store and buy Old Doll for $2.99, or Krista Theme, which is based on an original soundtrack from the Terranigma game, which is great. And there's my store. And then also, if you have any questions, you can contact me personally. And so it's just a very basic game here, or website here. I was thinking of Terranigma and stuff. So yeah, let's drop that or stop sharing. But yeah, you can get my music there. And there we go. 1 second. I really am hoping, I kind of want to make a cup of tea, something potent, and have that fruit fly go away because it's kind of annoying me. We're still not, we reached the second summer. We had a false fall and now we're on a second summer. So we still have, you know, the typical summer bugs. But anyway, that's unfortunate. I'm just going to have to ignore it. So, what's going on with music real quick before we get into the topic is I've been working out pretty much a catalog of stuff that I've released and stuff I'd like to maybe remaster into the future, and then also stuff I haven't released yet. And I really have a lot of music that's in the catalog. I have over 60 tracks. You know, some are on my website, some are not. And I'm very much considering getting into the physical CD space and selling, you know, on the online store, physical CDs. It actually is doable. It's pretty cost effective. I do have to purchase a minimum amount of CDs. So it's an okay amount. Hopefully I can get to selling CDs probably in the year 2025. I'd like to sell all my albums that are 30 minutes and longer in duration in the physical media space. And then any singles and EPs, I might just kind of consolidate them as one CD, you know, something that's 6 or more tracks and 30 minutes or more than 30 minutes. So that is the project coming up. I'm very excited. I have a lot of music I need to release, and I've been working away, chipping away at my current album, and it's coming along. It's almost there. It's getting there. But yeah, it's a lot of stuff. So anyway, that's my musical endeavor here. Let's continue on with the chat. I'm gonna have to make some tea real quick. I know that's kind of a weird idea, but I think that the bug likes the tea. 1 second. All right, so I'm boiling the water right now. Maybe my prof can make some tea for me once I boil the water. But yeah, it's just summer bugs are a little bit of a nuisance. All right. Looks like you guys are talking amongst yourselves. Good. All right. Let's see how you are faring. Yeah.
Put some fruit up.
I tried fruit. I think they like the tea. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get that ready soon. Daniel Heron, good to see you. Greetings from Boston. Nice. Good job seeing one of your favorite artists out there, Mary Fall. That's wonderful. Hopefully you do a live video or some commentary on that. We always love seeing your concert commentaries. Crystal Ashes, welcome. Thank you for coming. So we might have a little bit of a delayed stream if you don't mind. We have to take care of this infestation. But yeah, at least I don't know. I don't know why I'm trying to explain my thoughts right now on summer bugs. Isn't it weird to drink tea in the summer? Not at all. I always have to have my caffeine. And if you're in an air-conditioned space, you know, you can have hot tea and all that. There goes my water. All right, now I'm unmuted. So let's go ahead and start. Studio Super, good to see you. We're going to be talking about the art world, so hopefully that applies to you. Any artists that you might consider like a formal education, this stream is for you. All right, good. All right, so thank you guys for the delayed response. Perfect, yes, hopefully that will work. My prof made tea for me. Hopefully it works, we'll see. All right. And Ace Moic makes a really good point. I drink my tea unsweetened in South Carolina just because I'm an evil incarnate. You know what? I've lived in the South for about 8 or 9 years now, and I still won't drink sweet tea. It has to be unsweetened. I like it black, I like it green, and that's pretty much it. I don't need to put cream or sugar in it. It's just by itself. So now we are ready. I think the fruit fly went away that way. I hope. But let's go ahead and talk about the art college closures. And I'm going to go ahead and share an article. So we'll start with an article. it's a medium-sized article. I'll try to get through as much of it as possible. I think there are a lot of pretty good points to extract from and discuss. And this, these recent, fairly recent in the last 5 years, these closures of art schools and colleges in general, because it's not just art, it's college in general. I would say this is it works in tandem with the general attitude surrounding college and specifically art college. Now, I will always be speaking my experience or speaking from my experience as a music liberal arts major. This will more be, the article is based on visual arts, but I think the two go hand in hand because the experience more or less sounds the same. So let's go ahead and begin with this article. Let me go ahead and present just one article. We'll present the article here. I think I have it. Looks good? Looks good. I'm just going to start reading, and then we will get back into the chat or do some discussion, and this should be a fun discussion among you guys, you artists out there, who may have considered at one point or who may consider in the future, our college is worth it, our art college is worth it. So it's a topic I really is meaningful to me. Let's go ahead and begin. 1 second. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So this is based on the Observer, and the person is Daniel Grant, who has written this back in 2023. So it's about a year old, give or take. Yeah, just about a year, 9/11/2023. Why so many independent art colleges are shutting their doors. The closure of independent art colleges and their absorption by larger institution tracks with national trends. But there's more going on than meets the eye. And let me see if you guys can see that. I probably can make it bigger. Let me go ahead and make it bigger. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. It has been a challenging time for art and design colleges, Deborah Oberlil, I'm going to say, executive director of the Rhode Island-based Association of Independent Colleges of Art and Design, AICAD. This is what she tells the Observer. That's putting it mildly. We got these people standing up in arms, like art is important. We've got to save this Coqueron, I think is called. College of Arts. I hope I'm pronouncing that word right. This is back in 2014. This picture was taken back in 2014. I was just getting my master's in 2014. In the past decade, several of these schools, these artists, including the San Francisco Art Institute, currently up for sale after foreclosure, Lime, I think it's called, the Academy College of Art in Connecticut, Oregon College of Art and Craft in Portland, and Memphis College of Art in Tennessee, as well as most of the roughly 40 for-profit art institutes. Some were saved, often through association with another institution, like merging of some kind. The Coqueron College of Art and Design, for example, was taken over by George Washington University in 2014. So this is, over about 10 years ago. Watkins College of Art and Design in Nashville was absorbed by the Belmont University in 2020 in light of the pandemic, obviously. And the School of the Museum of Fine Arts of Boston became part of Tufts University. Now, AICAD, that's kind of a hard acronym to say, had 42 member institutions at its peak, but now has 39, and only because the organization began admitting schools not focused on traditional art and design programs such as the New York School of Interior Design and Woodbury University in Burbank, which is focused primarily on business administration and architecture. And I don't think it's even traditional architecture as we would think of, old cathedrals or old buildings that you would see, in the, that was built in the 1800s, like in Chicago. Like Chicago has very impressive architecture. I don't even think it's that. I think this is just general functional architecture that they're talking about. We expect that we will see more closures and mergers in the future, Oberlil said. Sometimes closing is the better option if you can't find an appropriate merger partner, as we've certainly seen with some less successful mergers. In some ways, it might have been better if they just closed. So now we're talking about, okay, what's better, just total closure or merging with another institution that might be more affluent, more well off, or just bigger numbers and attendance and all that. Some mergers, such as the Watkins College of Art and Design with the Christian Church affiliated Belmont University, are not without controversy. On the positive side, Obolil noted that the Watkins merger did maintain some opportunity for studying art and design in Tennessee, which was shrinking fast with the closure of the Memphis College of Art. These are not insignificant institutions. They're not big names like Yale or Harvard, but these are establishments that are suffering and are under the impending doom of foreclosing or closing down. Another merger, that is Tufts University. I had a friend who went there, and the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. Yeah, so the two, Tufts University and the School of Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, had merged together, was perhaps less jarring as the two institutions had established combined degree program harkening back to the 1980s in which students from one school could take courses at another. This is a very dense article to read. That's just a side note. However, each school had its own culture, which, according to Nate Harrison, Dean of the Academic Affairs at the School of Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts University, caused some bumps in the road. It's a work in progress. Tufts applicants tend to be at the top of their high school classes academically, while art school applicants are more focused on the quality of their portfolios than GPA and SAT scores. And we might talk about SAT scores or testing in general based on Harvard and Yale and all those really big name schools. Our admissions have gotten more rigorous, Harrison said, which affects art students more than traditional academic applicants. Additionally, Bachelors of Fine Arts students at Tufts do not receive grades for art classes. While academic classes are graded traditionally, academic students at Tufts who take studio art courses sometimes find this disconcerting. It's a work in progress. Let's see. It's going to get into some more salient points down here. Financial pressures led to many of the closures and mergers. Several now shuttered institutions, now closed, pursued large capital-intensive building projects. This is really key. They want to invest in real estate. Oftentimes when it happens, it's with the expectation that with the investment in physical infrastructure, there will be increased enrollment, which is a silly corollary, if I do say so myself. So they think they need to expand the physical footprint. When projections do not come to pass, when enrollment does not happen, these institutions are faced with an excessive debt, a load of debt, threatening their survival. So this is pretty important because I even saw this back in like 2011, 2012, when I saw some very impressive buildings and renovations around the University of Washington. Now, it's my understanding that the University of Washington has the money to do that, but if other colleges have done the same and there hasn't been money, it kind of lends me to believe that maybe the University of Washington does not have money for that kind of stuff. And these were some good looking buildings. And the money that went into these new buildings are taking from tenured professors. Maybe tenured professors are being replaced by adjunct professors. And so it's a trickling down effect where the money is not going to the actual education process. The money, in fact, is going to the experience, the college experience, with the great, gymnasiums and, sporting buildings and all that good stuff. Now, it's impressive, it's attractive, but you got to put the money into the education to have things like good enrollment. Ron Jones, I'm going to continue here on this paragraph here. Ron Jones, one of the last presidents of Memphis College of Art, admitted that the school racked up significant debt in the early part of the new millennium, in the same way many Americans did, purchasing real estate at top dollar with the expectation that it would continue to increase in value, provide financial security, and a source of future income. Instead, real estate prices plummeted by the end of the decade, leaving the art school with debts it could not pay, and an endowment that was shrinking markedly. So an endowment or things like fellowship and grants are, whittling down to just the basics, basically. Basic needs, because professors and academic institutions, they need those grants, and so if you're strapped for cash, because of real estate, that's just not going to go to good grants for both professors, departments, or students, and whatever the case is. All right, keeping up with the latest trends and technologies in a variety of disciplines also presents a challenge for already cash-strapped institutions. This is most critical in, quote, design fields where technological advances keep moving with the minimum these technological advances keep moving the minimum requirements for professionals and entering those fields. For example, 3D modeling was a nice to have skill in many design fields that not long ago you could get an entry-level job without it. Now it's a must-have skill recent graduates are expected to have. Institutions with relevant programs must update the curriculum so students can compete in rapidly changing job markets. And from what I understand, and maybe even Professor Geek can he has probably a basic understanding of this even better because he is a professor. That curriculum is still mostly dependent on what the professor wants. So if the professor thinks a lot of the new stuff is irrelevant or not necessary, and he or she is teaching maybe an outdated idea or an outdated curriculum, that it might be, yeah, the admin will probably say, hey, set the curriculum in this way, but it's still under the professor's tendencies or principles or whatever the case is. I'm trying to think, like, whatever the professor is prone to teach, that will be the class. Yes, there's going to be some oversight. There's going to be some changes, but some professors are dogged in their curriculum, for better or for worse. So students are subject to that specific curriculum, whether it's outdated or following the new trends. So there's that with, especially with technology. By the way, there are so many factors. This is just one article, and I think, oh my goodness. Okay, I'll try to read through this quickly. I thought it was a shorter article, but oh well. Actually, let me actually skip a couple paragraphs here. The closure of independent, so this is important, the closure of independent art colleges and their absorption by larger institutions also tracks with national trends affecting liberal arts colleges and state universities in the US. Fewer people, this is really important, fewer people are applying to pursue higher education, referred to the education field as enrollment cliff. So if you ever are in the academic space, in the admin space, and you hear the phrase enrollment cliff, that means there are not enough students enrolling that sustains or maintains the income or the profit required to pay certain expenses. There we go. So as the cost of earning a diploma continues to rise and more high school age students are questioning the value of a degree, particularly if all that degree guarantees years of paying loans. Let's see. I'll start this sentence fresh. And when college, I kind of want to read that all again. This is a very dense article. I should have read this out loud before I read it to you guys. Let's see. I'll just say this. The cost of earning a diploma continues to rise, and more high school age students are questioning the value of a degree, especially if they think it's just going to be about paying off student loans in the future. And when college degrees in general are viewed as being too expensive with a low return of investment, a studio art degree, especially a bachelor's of fine arts, may look even more like a luxury, not an actual degree to get into the workforce. Affordability is a concern, this CEO notes, and that art is a part of a group of disciplines that are not remunerated well in the marketplace of jobs. This is true, and this is where I'm going to talk more off the cuff in the discussion. A lot of people who are seeking art and a specific art degree, they graduate finding themselves they have not been prepared to apply their art skills in the workforce. Tuitions are getting higher, so things are just not as cost effective as they were back in like the 70s and 80s, where if you worked a full-time job or even a part-time job, you probably could pay off college with that part-time job. Very different a few decades ago. Okay, let's see. Okay, so they're just talking about the college or the price for art materials and the like. So in a nutshell, art degrees are quite expensive. All right. And then finally, the CEO here of this independent college or institute of these independent colleges, she concludes with she says art may not be a discipline that's remunerated well. I actually don't even know what that word means. Remunerated? I don't think I've ever heard that word before. Sorry. I'm admitting that to you, but it is necessary. I want to know what that word is because it's hard to pronounce. Re. Oh, you know what? I think it's remunerate. No, remunerate is a word. I don't know. Oh, there goes that fly. Anyway, I don't know what that means. You got to prepare reading ahead of time, just like a Catholic lector. We as a society, she concludes, as a government, haven't quite figured out how to balance those two things. So basically, what she's saying, and I'll stop sharing here. Basically, what she's saying is people are trying to find the value of art in the marketplace, and they're trying to see is it worth applying in the marketplace, or is it just important to society? And I say both. And she says that it's up to the as well as government, because they give a lot of grants and stuff. It's up to the government to see the balance of the two things. And honestly, I don't think the government needs to be involved in things like art. That's a whole other can of worms that I'd have to talk about another time. So anyway, that was a little bit more dense than I realized, that article. But it was a lot of it actually talked about a couple salient points. The first one is students now, the generation now of 18, 19, 20-year-olds are weighing in or really are assessing whether or not college in general is worth it. Because possibly in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, or before that, the degree was the certificate of a good paying job or a career. And with art, that is debatable, because I have some ideas about why that might not be so. But at least in the general higher education space, a degree was a certificate that would aid you in the job market process. Like you could get probably a very decent job. Now degrees, they I said this before, but I've actually had to take off my education off my resume to get just any job. Because if I had if I wanted a good job, maybe that was already taken, maybe that was already filled, and then I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to be overqualified, because a degree can actually overqualify you for jobs. Like being a receptionist, don't put your education on the resume if you want a receptionist job, because you could theoretically, I don't think you can really legally, but it's in people's minds that you could push for a raise or push for higher pay if you are educated. I think that notion is outdated. I really think people, especially into this new decade, they really are thinking, well, if I could just take an online course or maybe take an online curriculum of some kind, maybe a 2-year education with an online school, 4-year education with an online school, a couple semesters, from an accredited online school, and get that certification. I guess Google now is offering certifications for job-related skills. Then that would be enough, and it's a lot more affordable, and it's a lot more flexible with time. So there are so many factors, and I won't cover them all on this stream, but there are so many factors that contribute to the colleges closing, the art colleges closing in particular, and so that was the first thing that students are now, or potential students are saying, you know what, if this degree isn't going to get me the job, well, then I'm just going to be racking up debt. I'm going to be strapped for cash for the rest of my life. It's just not worth it. That's the first big factor. That's what's dropping the enrollment. The second factor that this article I was reading is mergers. And what mergers are as we know with business and companies, is, okay, this company is struggling. It needs to be merged with this company that is doing okay. That's in the black. It's not in the red. It's in the black as far as profitability and investments and all that. And how people are in the red? Well, not enough enrollment, inflation, tuition hikes, investing in real estate and in buildings that are not going to be a very good return on investment. So colleges are strapped for cash. So all of this is making the colleges or it's forcing the colleges to close, to shut its doors. There was I think a Christian art college in New York that maybe in recent years had been had to close the doors, like with students graduating or about to graduate. Like some students in their senior years in colleges were wondering if they were going to continue their semester in that college. And unfortunately, a lot of people, the college had to shut its doors before like the final semester for so many people about to graduate. They had to find, there goes the fruit fly. They had to find another college. Like that's a merger as well, where like, okay, this college can take in the students of this college that is closing down. And students who do not enroll or re-enroll right away have like an 18% chance of graduating, at least in this case with schools closing in New York. It's like, man, that's kind of scary. Now, I wanted to bring up this point, and I saw this on a video. One news network, and I can't remember what it was, started with C, but it wasn't CNN. But it was a news network that talked about a college merger in New York, and that it was the closing down of this Christian art college. I think it's called King's College. I think it is a Christian college, if I remember correctly. Maybe not. I don't know. But so it shut its doors, and then sent the students away, not graduating. They had to re-enroll for under a different institution, whatever that may entail. And there was another part. Oh yeah, in conjunction with that, with the merger information, major Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, I think, Princeton, well, in recent years, their enrollment has gone up. And one major factor that was mentioned in this news video that I saw was they dropped the SAT scores. Now, I'm not a test taker. I'm a horrible test taker. I had the worst SAT scores ever. I had the worst GRE scores. That's the test you take after you get your bachelor's and you're trying to get into a get into a master's program. And I didn't have a good. I'm not a test taker. I had really bad scores. I don't even want to mention my SAT scores at the time, but it was really low. And so I'm like, okay, SAT, ACT tests, those were the standardized tests for seniors to take to get into the basic admission of a 4-year university. Well, recently, at least from what the news source said, Princeton, Harvard, Yale dropped those standardized tests, and they have had an influx of student admissions and enrollment. And I'm like, so it kind of sounds like their cerebral or the academic standards are decreasing. Now, I'm not an advocate of standardized tests, but if you would think if they're getting rid of that, they're replacing it with something else and something more efficient that would be kind of a selecting process, like process of elimination. Okay, these people are qualified. These people need another year of studying before they can be qualified or before they retake the exam. And so that was a pretty interesting notion or interesting idea. It's a very frightening idea to think that the major players are like blooming with, like the biggest colleges in the U.S. are blooming with enrollment, blooming with a huge amount of students, while the independent colleges or the smaller colleges that are still good establishments, are closing their doors. And I'm like, it brought to mind this idea of colleges monopolizing. And I'm thinking, I think these colleges are monopolizing. Like, I think the major colleges, the major Ivy League institutions are just monopolizing their resources, and with smaller colleges making very bad financial decisions, and the enrollment is not helping with those financial decisions. Well, okay, if college is still important to people, they're going to go to the big ballooning colleges, even if the standards are getting lower and lower. So that's a whole can of worms. So many factors are playing into the shutting down of art colleges in particular, and just colleges. Now, that article was specifically art related, and I wanted to talk about that because This stream is in conjunction, and I'll get to the chat after this a little bit of a discussion, but this is in conjunction. The closing down of art schools, I think, also is in conjunction with the art world and the expectations of the art world. They won't admit it. I didn't see any people talking about it except like YouTubers who had been in the art college space, and then they come out with like thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and they're so bitter and they're so resentful, they're so disappointed that the art schools did not prepare them to market their art. And so we're going to get into the art world. We'll try to talk about visual art because I think it's the same thing as it was with my music experience. So let me talk about the art world real quick. The art world, this word or this phrase, the art world, if I could say it, the art world could be, this phrase could be a controversial phrase because the art world it can be vague if you don't really know what that means. Now, colloquially speaking, when I say art world, at least by what I've heard from other people in this art world or having experienced this art world, the art world is a very specific and exclusive consolidation of people that, for lack of a better argument, they just, pat each other on the back. And it's a collection of prestige. It's people buying art, auctioning off art in the city space, outside the academics, and then inside the academics, it's all these professors giving students, at least with my experience in music. So maybe if any of you on the replay or in the chat right now, if any of you had been an art student, I'd love to know your experience, but I feel like it's the same. Professors in the liberal arts college really do not set students up for success. They set them up for failure. They set students up with the wrong expectations because in the art world, the professors that are ushering their students in the art world, music as well, they're setting these liberal arts students up with the expectations, it's all about status, it's all about prestige. It's not really so much what I compose, what I make, as long as what I make is circulating in the right networks. So let me talk about my experience with music. And I think from what YouTubers I heard talking about art, it was the same thing, the same experience. So in the music world, or in the music department in the liberal arts college in North America, I can never speak for any other continent or country except the United States. But I think it's true with UK, Europe, all that. In the music department space for college, and it's still going. I haven't been there in 10 years or longer, but it's still a thing because I kind of keep tabs on it sometimes. You're presented with this curriculum and with this advice and with this instruction that you need to write music for the academics. Now, what does that look like? Well, if you think about the academic space, and Professor Geek has complained about this too, the academics, if they're not careful, they write journals for themselves. So they write, they write and publish and circulate all their works inside this very, very confined space with a very, very a type of ego and a type of restricted space of it's like a little echo chamber of academics. So scholarly journals, for instance, can be very heavy in text. It can be poorly written. It can even have wild theories and unfounded notions. But if you're in the right circle, you will be published. Whether you're a tenured professor, maybe even a college graduate, you will be published in these sacred journals. So there are sacred music journals. And I'm kind of being a little facetious when I say that because I was a student librarian in the music class or the music school. And, I would organize these music journals, and these were prestigious music journals. If you had an article in this music journal that would never be read in public, you were something else. You were the sensation of the academics. So you were admitted, this is one example, but if you were to publish something in the music journals, whatever journal that was, theory, history, whatever the case is, you would be admitted to this very privileged, and I hate using that word because it's so overly abused, but you were ushered into this privileged network of scholars and professors and artists and residents and curators and people who have won awards, people who I know because I was a student, but no one's ever heard before if you hadn't been in the university. So it's this art world with music is very people, and therefore your stuff is circulated. Or if you don't know those people, it's like they won't give you the time of day. Like and with that comes a lot of personality deficiencies, shall we say. Like ego is a very big old thing in the academic space. So if you go to the music department, you really can't go in as a composer, at least with my experience. I couldn't write beautiful music, shall we say. I couldn't write beautiful poetic music without people saying, well, I guess that was composed all right, but that's not what we're going for here. We're going to go for music that is utterly experimental. We're going to go for music that gets you uncomfortable. We're going to go for music that has a social agenda. We're going to go for music that has unwarranted commentary on human beings. We need to get you writing music that makes the audience on edge in some way. And the art can be good, the art can be bad. It doesn't really, really matter in this space as long as we get you writing unconventional music. And I think the same is true for art. In the liberal arts space, the attitude is I must produce unconventional works of art. An unconventional body of work of art. I can't say the phrase right. You know what I mean? Something unconventional. Something it's almost as if you need to prove that you have this esoteric knowledge of art. And you need to make something and create something that the masses don't really get. They can't really understand. So that is the art world. In my experience, it's music, but it's part of the same thing where you need to know your professors. You need to kind of kiss up. You got to stroke their egos a little bit. And I don't say this too maliciously because I really did like my professors, but there was that kind of tier, like student tier, faculty tier, and you don't push buttons. You push buttons at your own risk, and at the same time, you got to write music that makes people uncomfortable. So you don't want to make professors uncomfortable. You don't want to make the student body uncomfortable. Like if, let's say you're in a room full of doctorates, and then they've got their professors, and you're an undergrad, and you got your professor. I've asked uncomfortable questions, and I got reprimanded for asking a simple question. And the professors, because I was an undergrad at the time, they would say, oh, well, thank you for asking this question. You just don't really understand the world right now. It was kind of like that condescension. And that was my experience for music. And that is the same experience in the art world or professors with art students giving these artists or these art students this false expectation. Like, you need to submit to this very constricted circle of, this very constricted network. You got to live in New York. You got to live in London. You got to live in one of the bigger cities in China, like Hong Kong, probably not even France, but New York was it. Like, if you're a serious artist, you're going to live in New York. That's been the mindset for decades. And I feel like it's still, that's how professors in the liberal arts space in music and in art, that's how they teach students. Don't worry about appealing to the masses. Don't be a rock and roll artist. You're not here to write Lord of the Rings. You're not here to write Star Wars. You're not here to write like Mozart. I'm not saying you should write like Mozart, but try not to have the public appeal. That's irrelevant. And so these students with thousands of dollars in debt come out with these wrong expectations of how to apply their artistic skills in the real world. Now, I think that's going away, one, with these closures, and I think also with what we got with the pandemic. Now, I'm going to say, while something like the pandemic really wrecked us societally in many, many ways, I teach students, and I saw like an increase of depression among my students. I saw like a stunt in growth as far as mentally. Like eighth graders were acting like fourth and fifth graders, and I do think the pandemic had a little bit to do with that. So I have some ideas. I can't. This is more speculation. I'm gonna say though, I will say that the pandemic, because we were forced to work remotely, I think it really got people creating new expectations for themselves as far as output, creative output. Like, who is my audience? Well, my audience is, people I talk to on YouTube. I talk to you on YouTube. My audience is people who like to listen to eclectic, ambient, and upbeat electronic music that my professors would not give the time of day. Like, if they knew what music I was trying to make now, they'd say, how did we fail you? One had an accent. How did we fail you? Like, we wanted you into SuperCollider, we wanted you into electronic music, but this is not the electronic music we had you try when you were an academic. So I think I lost my train of thought there. So, but actually going back to the pandemic, it forced a lot of art students who had graduated with these false expectations of what art could be and what it needs to be in the real world, in the marketplace. It started shifting. It's like, okay, you know what? I think I'm going to try to market myself not by these exhibitions that are, paid for by very wealthy people. Maybe I'll just go to the coffee shop, and if they've got a wall and I can pay them a fee every month to put my art on this wall at the coffee shop, then maybe I could do that. And then maybe I could visit the coffee shop every morning and say, oh yeah, this is the artist for our work. People started like branching out and saying, okay, I know what art I want to do. I know what art I want to make. And it's going against my experience with music and composing music. It's going against the expectations of their professors, the expectations of the faculty, the expectations of the music journal writers and the academic writers and the scholars, and all of that, I think is dissipating. I think people, especially people going into college, they're seeing how much college costs, and a lot of people won't choose a music degree. They'll choose they'll choose maybe a business degree. Or if they do choose a music degree, it's going to be because I want to be a public school educator, or because I want to be a jazz musician and travel the world. If they see something viable in that music degree, they'll pursue it. But even so, I think it's dissipating. I think the cultural influence that we kind of put on these institutions, we put on these colleges, are going away. I think in the 70s and 60s and the 50s, art schools had a lot more clout for good reason, because college in general had a lot more clout. There was prospect in getting a college degree. Now, I'm not saying that every college degree is worthless, but we have to consider many factors. One big factor in our cultural space now is there are so many there are so many accredited online universities, not even just universities, just vocational education, like skill building education, that a lot of people go to. The other reason that people might not go to school is because they can learn something like music theory on YouTube. When I was studying music theory in college, like 15 years ago, if it was YouTube, it was like cat videos and stuff. I didn't even know what YouTube was like 15 years ago. I got my music theory training with a professor, with 5 professors over the course of 4 years. And so it's so different. Like the environment is so different. And yet the art world thinks it's still the right way. Like, okay, it's our network, it's our circulation, it's ours to have, it's ours to keep. And then these poor students are coming out like, you never taught me how to market my art. You never taught me anything about social media. Social media was not a thing really when I was in college. Maybe Facebook and maybe MySpace. But when I was in college, there wasn't really a need to teach social media because it just was kind of developing. But I'm actually very surprised, well, not really, that art colleges now would not have that as a class. Like, okay, this is how you need to market your art. This is how you need to build a website, market your website. This is the monthly expenses to in your art on your own website. You should have your own YouTube channel. You should have your own Instagram, whatever the case is. No, they're going to that old like 1950s artist in residence. Like, no, it's all about who you know. It's not about what you know. It's about who you know. It's like actually, it might be about who you know, but it's also about what you know. So, anyway, that was. I feel like I could talk about this very topic for hours and hours. Like, had the whole evening with you, but. It is Sunday, it's date night with my prof, and I want to spend time with you guys. So let's get into the chat. I'm sure you guys have some stuff to say. And Studio Super, thank you so much for your $10 super chat. From the title alone, this is what happens when art is treated purely subjectively. If it's subjective, there's no correct way to do it. So why the need for classes, that kind of thing. Yeah. And in addition to that, there was an aggressive pull by the faculty to break away from tradition. Now they might, and I actually kind of want to. Oh, we'll keep your comment up there, Studio Super. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's talk about what you're saying too. Is I had a weird experience with my music education because. They were pulling away from the traditional art form. They were pulling away from the symphony. They said, don't listen to, well, they didn't say it, but that was kind of their attitude. Like, no need to listen to Mozart. No need to listen to how Beethoven worked. You learn that in theory, you learn that in history, but in composition, you need to be experimental. Now, I am of the mind that you should be experimental, holding on to tradition. So hold on to if I could say that right, hold on to tradition, but work in your timeline. What that means is, I think there's a great deal of importance in something like the Western classical sonata form. That was so much, very, very important with Mozart, Beethoven, Haydn even, where you have a kind of a triangle form. You've got, let's see if I can do this right. No, this way for you guys. You've got an exposition, a musical statement, you've got a digression, a breaking away of that musical statement, and then you've got a recapitulation of that first musical statement, ABA form. It's a very, from Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star to the most difficult Mozart sonata, and it's wonderful because it keeps you intact. It keeps you centered on how the music should progress, how your ear is hearing the progression of that music. Now, I'm not saying write like Mozart because Mozart wrote in his time. He'd have written differently if he lived before his time or long after his time, because the evolution of music kept changing. Now with things like synthesizers and computer music, yeah, I need to write in my time. I do like analog music that I do like playing violin and playing in the physical space, but I love electronic music. But I'm not going to write electronic music like Morton Subotnick or John Chowning. They did their great work in the 70s and getting into the 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I appreciate their stuff, but I'm not going to... I felt like my professors were telling me, this is important. Barry Truax is important. John Chowning is important. And they are. They are so super important in computer music history. And I love their contributions to that. But I've got my own thing going in the year 2024. It's not going to be spectral music by Grisey. It's going to be sound engraver music in this decade. And a lot of students, even now, even in the decade of the 2020s, they're trying to copy. I don't even know if they realize they're copying. They're copying music that was done, that was very edgy at the time, like in the 1970s, but it's so samey, same old in the 2020s. But the professors still think, well, this is our mark. This is our historical mark. We're still making this kind of music. It's like, can you make something different, please? Actually, I think some of my professors were working on like brain music, like attaching these nodes, these patches on the human mind. And these musicians, these pro musicians, were creating music with their brain waves. I'm like, it's not something I would do, but at least it's somewhat indicative of the times. And it was pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. Just a sidebar, one of the musicians, Stuart Dempster, yeah, Dempster. He's probably in his 90s now, but I knew him when he was in his 80s, and he was a phenomenal trombonist. And he was strapped up, and he, using his inner ear, which is you hear it in your mind before playing it, he developed some interesting sounds based on the interface that he was connected to, and then the music he just inherently knew because his mind was so sharp even at 86 years old. So I mean, something like that, like the merging of science and electronic music, I think is cool. But where's that going to develop? And are you going to do that same thing 30 years from now? No, you shouldn't. It's not going to be edgy by then, even though people do believe it's still edgy. And going into, man, I could write a book about this. I'm so jazzed when I talk about this. So from the title alone, as you say, Studio Super, this is what happens when art is treated purely subjectively. And a lot of student showcases will be art that is not good. Like, form is not good, the aesthetics is not good, the coloring is not good, the idea is silly, and yet professors will say, but this is what you will see in the exhibitions, this is what you will see in New York City. And then students are thinking, well, yeah, I'll be able to sell what I can do with those people and not just with the world in general. Yeah. All right. Let's continue on down. All right. Crystal Ashes, thank you. Yeah, the Tree of Gondor. That is a scion of Nimloth, the Fair. And I say this not ever going to ever support Rings of Power. I know they're kind of working on season 2. And it'll be forgotten. It will be forgotten. Or if it's remembered, it's going to be vaguely remembered. Elias Jones, thank you also for being a channel member. You say, there are 2 separate issues for our traditions to endure. One is patronage. Oh, thank you for reminding me. I want to make that point. One is patronage, which is getting better thanks to Patreon. The other is education, which apprenticeship is needed in all trades. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I really wish our education system focused on apprenticeship, even with art. It doesn't have to be building cars or fixing engines. Even art can have a viable apprentice program, I think. And I feel like the UK still has that. I thought I saw it somewhere that the UK has that in some form with art, but I could be wrong. But let's talk about patronage. So you're talking about Patreon and other platforms that does that and or do that. And I always think if I ever set up a platform like that, it's because I want, okay, if you pay $5 a month, you're going to get these benefits every month. And I just haven't had the time to set that up. I want something worth it, but that's pretty time consuming when you think about it. But I love that those platforms are there. I want to talk about traditional patronage though, because your composer, like Haydn, Mozart, they worked, their patron and Mozart's father and Bach and all those people. Well, Haydn, I think, worked for royalty. So his physical patron, his means of living was writing music for the court or writing music for the royal family. Bach and I know Mozart's father, I think, and maybe Mozart for a little bit before he was writing more for the common folk. Oh, he also wrote for the emperor too. That was a part of his patronage relationship. But the church, really supported the living of some of these great composers, and like Bach would write like a whole entire sonata for organ or keyboard music like in a week, and then to be played like the next week, or so I was told. Tchaikovsky had a matron. I think I don't know her. Romantic composers or composers living in the early mid to mid 1800s that had a noble person or a noble family support their living so they can compose music. And I think patronage is taking on a new form now with the online space, where people who love listening to your music or love your books or love your commentary are willing to give you X amount of dollars per month to keep them going. Now, I have one tier, $1.99 a month. If you still want to support this channel, I love that. So if you guys want to still support, I'm indebted to you. I'd still like to give you benefits for the $2 a month. And I explained what those were, like comments posted up on screen, for instance, and then shout outs for any extra videos that I do. But there's that. But here's a really important thing. Man, this is so fun to talk about, and it's already 7 o'clock. Okay. One reason that I did not see written or shown in videos, but I'm sure it's out there. One reason why these art departments and these art schools are closing is because the patronage is dying off. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you ever go on a really good, like a really prestigious college campus, and you see like a music hall, like a concert hall, and there's like this long name, sometimes the name's hyphenated, or you'll see inside the hall, maybe there's multiple halls in this huge structure. Like, so for instance, I don't know the new name now, but we had a couple halls. Well, University of Washington has a couple halls. When I was going to school, it was called Meany Hall, and Meany, MEANY, I think was a major donor. Now, I think they changed it in recent years. I think that school changed the name of the hall. It's a beautiful hall, by the way. It's gorgeous. University of Washington, the libraries are beautiful. The concert halls are beautiful. It's a beautiful campus. Hope it stays that way. I'm for whatever I think was lacking with the college education, I'm glad University of Washington was my college. I'm happy to have studied under the professors I had, and it's a gorgeous campus. It's a really impressive campus. But anyway, Meany Hall is now called another name. It's a very long name, but these names are donors. They put in up to millions of dollars into these buildings. So like a major donation to keep people having fellowships, to keep people having scholarships and grants and all of that. And so these major donors would have their name etched in an actual building. Now, that is going away. Donors who are very wealthy, who want to support the arts, they are dying off. Like, even there's been newsletters in colleges of like, oh, the passing of this person. She was wonderful. She donated to the music school for years. She gave to I had like one tiny little scholarship that was based on from a wealthy couple, and if the wealth goes, I'm sorry, colleges, you're going. It can't be sustained by government alone. A lot of these liberal arts colleges are supported in some way or another, are supported by wealthy donors that are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Even the symphonies, like major city symphonies, donors support these symphonies. The symphonies have to find other means because these donors are going away. They're just getting old and they're passing away. And if the young generations are not thinking along those lines, like, well, even if I have wealth, I don't need to donate to a school. I don't need to donate to a concert hall. then how are the university, how are the liberal arts going to sustain themselves? Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Well, I really do think the college scene is gonna change by a lot. I think we're gonna see a monopoly. That's my educated guess. I think we're gonna see a monopoly of really major players like Ivy League schools, and I think even like my university. I think it might not last. At least some departments might not last. We'll see. I could be wrong. I hope none of my professors are watching me. All right, let's continue. Chigawa, good to see you. I remember, and thank you for being a channel member. Always, like you're like almost a year now. I remember nearly 20 years ago, I tried to go to the Art Institute, but they were charging way too much money, even back then. Yeah. And you know what that money is for? This is an ugly truth, but the money, some people will fork over so much money for the status. Like, oh, I graduated. Like, if you went to Harvard in the 80s, you were a big deal. You were cream of the crop as far as students are concerned. Princeton, Harvard, Yale. Like, if you go to those old sitcoms, like those family sitcoms like Growing Pains or, yes, I'll say it, Cosby Show. You know, if like a character, like a young, 19-year-old went to Princeton, that was a big deal. That means scholarship-wise, they were very smart. They were the top tier in their students. Now, if something like standardized tests are removed and there's like this bloating of admissions, I'm not going to say it's because standards are up. I think standards are down because they want the money. They want the money. And so I think there's going to be like this ballooning of Ivy League schools if independent colleges keep going down in number. Brian Gilmartin says, I may have said this before, but I feel like an art school would not have helped me create the kind of characters I do now, especially since I pull so much from popular arts in general and video games in particular. Yeah, absolutely true. Well, and so when I say art world, when I was using that phrase art world, this was a very specific group of people that circulated the same stuff from the same people. The, art in general should be marketed. You should sell your music. You should, if it's high quality, sell your art and, promote your art and do crowdfunding campaigns and all that good stuff to pay back. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I don't know how to pronounce it. Remunerate? Remunerate? I don't know how to pronounce that word. There are some words, I have a pretty extensive vocabulary, but there are some words that I just don't know. But thank you, my prof, who is a professor of English. Let's see. Asa Moick says, oh, wait, you're a member, but you're also talking to Brian. What should I do? Well, this is for Brian, but I'll just put it up. Otherwise, I get complaints about a giant tea container that nobody else is drinking from. Ah, interesting. This is a question for me, though. Is art school worth going if it's hecka woke? I've been wondering about this for a while. Well, even before it was woke, it was not viable to apply your art in the workforce. Let's just say that. When I was going to music school, the reason why you should have gone to music school, and I did for a time, was you were planning on being a music educator of some kind, whether in the public space or in the higher education space. So if I wanted to be a doctorate in music composition, I had in mind I was going to be a professor of music composition. When I was getting my bachelor's in music education, I had in mind I was going to teach public school orchestra, for instance. So if you're going with the mind of being a professor, then yeah, get your education, because you're not going to be a professor if you don't have your college education. But to be a professional artist, the answer is a definitive no. It's not worth going to college if you can be a professional in your space with a lot of training and pay for instruction. I've always said that. I'm a music teacher. People pay for my music instruction. get better at your craft. But yeah, you market your craft. It's not worth going. Now, this was before everything went to the pits as far as the culture war. I went to college before there was some left tendencies, and that's okay. That's just part of the nature of the beast when it comes to college. I had a lot of left-leaning professors and adjuncts, and a lot of them didn't like what I had to say, even just remotely, like being little mousy sound engraver saying, what about this? Man, I would be so different if I was in a music class. Oh man, I kind of want to sit in one of those chairs again with all my 15 years past and talk to them. It'd be fun. It'd be so fun. But it was not a culture war when I went to school. There would always be like protests and stuff. There'd be like there would be really bad things happening on college campuses because students have always protested. Like protesting was always a thing, but not on the level I don't think we've seen in recent years. But that aside, even before all that came crashing down, you went to college to be a professor or a public school teacher if you're going to the liberal arts, going through the liberal arts education. If you just want to learn how to compose music and write for orchestras and movie music, no, there were other avenues. And I wish I sort of knew that. But then again, I thought I was going to be a high school orchestra teacher. Like up until my last semester, I was planning on being a teacher. And then my last semester, like the final weeks, I thought, what? I don't need to be a public school teacher. And I never went back. It was so weird. So, I mean, my education was worth it. At the time, my mode of thinking was I'm going to be a teacher. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to be a professor. And then I decided not to. I don't think I'd survive. All right. Final Fantasy Fan says it's kind of no surprise that hardly anyone is going to art college or college in general because the amount of money you need to pay is enough money to buy a house, if not maybe a car. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Maybe a lifetime of groceries? Brian says college in general has steadily become more and more of a money pit for a variety of reasons. Yeah, if you, I mean, I would never ask people to get student loans. Actually, I think I see another super chat. Let me get down there. Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Studio Super. Folks try to quote Miyazaki saying he never considers the audience in making his art. Though I tell them, like Avatar, his stuff is more spectacle. If it wasn't for the animation, would it still be loved? I don't know. Like, I know who you're talking about, like the very famous animator of Studio Ghibli. Is that how you pronounce the word? Like, he's so beloved. Like, and all his stories are different. They're different in tone, even if it's the same archetypal style he has in animation, but they're all different in tone. But he's I want to say this very carefully. He's a brand of sorts, everyone knows who he is, everyone knows his studio, everyone knows his style. So he's gonna have an audience, like no matter what. For as long as he keeps making film, he's gonna have an audience. Because his stuff, I haven't seen all his stuff, but I know it to be very poignant. Like there's something eccentric but magical and thoughtful of his films, and people know that. Like, yeah. So, but thank you again for the $10. Appreciate that. Let's continue on. And you guys got great questions. I feel like I have so much on my mind, but it's already past 7. We'll get to more stuff. I knew I was gonna have fun talking about this. I suspected. Let's see. I gotta start walking early again because it's getting darker again. So Samuel, hey, welcome Samuel. If I hadn't welcomed you before, you say I take lots of online drawing courses for a few years now, but that's after being instructed live with high school and specifically experienced artists. Okay, cool. That's good. Andrea says, then again, if you try to, you're a member, so I gotta put your comments up. Then again, if you try to work a normal job, it still won't be enough to even afford to live on your own. Maybe this is just a California problem. I mean, even if you live, this is a good point. Even if you live in a part of the country where it is affordable, where living expenses is affordable, it's still hard to market your art. But there are ways. I think having even a small artistic business is viable these days, even if it takes years to develop. I think I'm going to recommend one thing that I'm trying to recommend to myself. And it is, yes, there is a saturation of information out there on the online space. It's hard to be discovered. But I'm going to have you take this into account, because I am. Discoverability is hard in the online space, but if you make something that is undeniably good, that someone somewhere out there just can't live without, you might have something. Like, make really attractive art, write really good short stories. I mean, find a thing that you can be very good at, and when people come upon it, they say, whoa, this is something I haven't seen before, or this is very unique. I think if you can make it very unique and undeniably good, I think you're gonna have a market of some kind. It might be like 100 people who like your stuff. Hey, but that's 100 buyers. I wouldn't complain about that. I'd be happy to have 100 people on my email list. Check out my email list at soundengraver.com. Because once I release something, I let those people know first. Anyway, continuing on. Man, this might be a longer stream than normal. I'm just having so much fun. Thank you, Brian. That's actually, in other words, you say the art world is mostly a group of elitists. Yes. Now, some people don't like that phrase because they say, hey, selling your art at a local auction at the county fair or something. That could be part of the art world. But when I say art world, and I think most people, I could be wrong, but I think when people do say art world, they're meaning that small, tight circle with the constant circulation of each other's works and exhibiting each other's works and stuff. Final Fantasy says, plus I've been trying to do more art while I've been getting more and more into writing, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't get into drawing. I'm not a visual artist, so I don't know what that's like. Excuse me. Enrique says, welcome. I think I've seen you before. People act as if art schools didn't do more damage than good, LOL. I think I know what you're talking about. I have to piece that sentence in my mind. Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think I'm hearing your sentence correctly in my head. Final Fantasy fan says it takes time to draw a figure, and sometimes you don't feel like you get it right. Hey, that's just part of the process. I feel the same way with composing or writing. It's not going to be a breeze every time, but you get stronger and better more quickly if you just keep doing it every day. Okay, so Scorpio. Can I just call you Scorpio? You say it sounds familiar to your experience when you were in art school. So you were in art school. Okay, so maybe the music experience that I had is more or less the same as your art experience, even though it's two different mediums. Two different media. Art forms, I'll just say. Stunning Brave, welcome. Let's see, wonder how they do nude model painting classes in today's climate. It was widely accepted when I went to school. Like, all the feminists, they were still very much like the social liberation feminists of the 1960s, where they just take off their shirts. If you go to a cafe, just watch out, because there might be some performance art out there, and they would take off their clothes, and people thought it was nothing. Me as a Christian, I'm like, I don't know, I can't. I mean, I wouldn't do it myself, but I just couldn't watch it. But no, that was, And I think people still don't have a problem with that in the art world. All right, Crystal Ashes, talking to Studying in Brave Megatron. Uh, Ace Moic says, resist having your spirit broken by the overlords. Final Fantasy. What was that? Final Fantasy says, was that your German accent or was that your impression of Yzma? I don't know who Yzma is. Sorry. I was actually trying to sound a little more French, like because like the French people that I spoke with, they would have kind of a more subdued French accent. It wasn't really melodramatic. It was very subdued. But sometimes I'd go into, it's like, yeah, that kind of sounds Germanic or East Europe or whatever. Graduated in 1995 before the internet blew up. Wow, that was the college. That was really the time to go to college. Oh man. Yeah, Sammy Proctor makes a really good point. The college degree has a cultural hold on the country. I have a few family members who ever so politely try to nudge me and get me to get a degree to get a job, regardless on the good it actually does these days. Sammy Proctor, that was my experience too. I'm one of very few people in my family that have gotten a college degree, and my dad was so happy when I graduated with my 2 bachelors because he's like, you are the first in a long, not many people in our family have finished school. They'd go to college, but then they wouldn't finish for whatever reason. And he was always so proud of me, but and I don't think he thinks like this now, but when I graduated, like, what is it, like 13 years ago now, he had that 80s 90s mindset that the college was going to absolutely guarantee you a good, well-paying job. And so he kind of because at the time when he would go to college, then that would be the case. But he thought that was the same in the 2010s, and it wasn't. Sure was not. But now I got a music teaching job, and some of these jobs need you to have a music degree, so it wasn't completely wasted. I'm still making above, minimum wage as a teacher, so I guess there's that. Yeah, Andrea's professors can lean a certain way. Let's just say that. Yeah, I probably need to continue on down because it's almost 7:30. Um, yeah, I would say too. Yes, Scorpio Pio. Now with the cultural war, I think you are right that some professors kind of just say what they say just to keep their jobs. I think I wouldn't doubt that a lot of them have been put between a rock and a hard place when it comes to that. Um, there you go. Elias Jones says, "Hey, on a oscilloscope. I don't even know if I said that word right. Shrooms on experimental but good music. Shrooms on a oscilloscope. It's kind of funny. There are a couple bands that are totally rock, psychedelic, that people would go to on some substance. Sometimes their music is so good. It's like I could be completely sober minded, not on anything. Not that I would be on anything, and still enjoy their music. Osric Tentacles is one of those bands. I think, is it a British band? I think they're British. I don't think they're American. I think they're still touring. Osric Tentacles and Spungle. I was binging. I need to go back to see what they sound like, but more electronic music. Well, Osric Tentacles is a prog rock band with a lot of great synthesizers. Really good composition. Really well done. Kind of gets you in the zone for like writing or something. Spungle is a little bit more active, and I mean, it's not electronic music I would write, but it's pretty good from what I remember. Let's see. All right, let's continue on down. Oh, thank you, Andreas Fernandez, for the $5 super chat. You say, I don't know. I know how you feel, even though I wouldn't mind never going to college. You also wouldn't want to break your parents' heart by not graduating college. Well, that's, yeah. This is just a suggestion, Andreas, if this is, this is past. I mean, this was in my past, so I don't face it now. But, thank you for the $5. If I may just encourage you, if you run into this with loved ones, just kind of weigh the pros and cons to going to college. Like I said before, there are some jobs that you do need a degree in order to get the job, like a higher paying teaching job. You do need a degree. So, I mean, college is worth it at that point, even though you should probably pay it as you go. Massage school, for instance, if you have a good clientele, you can make a lot of money as a massage therapist or a music therapist even, and there are some, education. You'd have to finish a huge level of education for that. Now, if that's not the case, if you don't want to be a teacher, just kind of weigh the pros and cons and then present them to your loved ones, saying, this is how expensive college is now. Even at the basic accredited four-year university, we're not even talking about private school. We're talking about state four-year university. The state you live in is still very expensive. And I want to say one point before wrapping it up. A lot of people go to college for the social experience. The social experience of being with your peers, getting to know people, living in the dorms, going to the football stadiums and the sporting events, going to the orientations, going to a local cafe in the campus, walking around campus. This is a 4-year, 5-year-long social experiment that people set up for themselves. People still have that expectation to go to college, but why they go to college instead of online universities or online courses that are accredited now and are, give you the certificate at like a fraction of the cost. Well, yeah, this is a good online education. This is a good set of online courses. I can get a certification for this job, but it's not the social experience, It's not going to campus. It's not studying at the library, Especially if it's a beautiful campus. Like if you're near a beautiful campus, it's like, hey, I've walked around some beautiful grounds, beautiful trees, beautiful parks, beautiful quad spaces, quadrant spaces, walkways, whatever the case is. I mean, yeah, like people are really paying a lot of money for the social experience that is college, not for the education. And I think that's going to be more evident as we go on. So man, guys, I love talking. This was so fun. I feel jazzed talking about this because it's like almost unloading my own experience with you, and I hope you found that helpful. And shout out to Andreas Hernandez and Studio Super. Thank you guys so much for your super chats. Do appreciate that. Yeah, well, we could still talk about the art world because actually I feel like there is more to talk about, but I just can't compact it in one night. And we're almost at the 2-hour mark, so we'll stop there. But thank you guys so much for watching and listening. I will, hopefully I've been really in the thick of SuperCollider. I've been like troubleshooting. I have some good things that I found, but there are things that are just I gotta present them in a video format, and it's a lot of information. So. Some SuperCollider stuff headed your way. We'll see how that is. But thank you guys so much for watching and listening. And until I see you next, keep producing, preserving, promoting that good art that you love out there, with or without a college degree, because you can. This is our happy place, the wonderful world of YouTube and social media. And thank you, Crystal Ashes. Yeah, I'll see you guys later, and take care.